for the fullness of who we are, for the multitudes we contain, for our beautiful and complicated pasts, presents, and futures. Come, let us worship together. I invite Mila Garrido and Abby Garrido Fishbein to light our chalice this morning.
We kindle our chalice flame as an act of connection with our larger faith community,
including the other Unitarian Universalist congregations that are holding a reproductive justice Sunday today.
May our collective efforts help create a world where all people have access to the care and resources and support they deserve.
Good morning, All Souls, and welcome. Today, I am so excited to bring you 4 brand new, never seen before musical anthems and videos this week. I'm grateful for all of their perfect imperfections, the moments where the kiddos drop a beat in our freedom and justice chant, which was just happened to be haphazardly recorded by a proud parent during one of our practices. And the moment in the offertory where I'm so moved to yell, "Sing!" to Jess at the end of her verse. These perfect imperfections remind me of what it's like to make music together. It's not always perfect. Sometimes folks are grumpy or we just don't quite get it. Sometimes the mics aren't on right when we start to sing or the video doesn't start right at the top of a recording. And yet, aspirations for live music making fill so many of my hopes for the future. Singing together makes me and so many others feel good. So I encourage you to give it a try today. Please join in the singing of our opening hymn and allow yourselves to be part of the perfectly imperfect chorus. The words will scroll on your screen.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, come, come, whoever you are. Want to worship whoever is leaving, cause it's no caravan of is leaving, cause it's no caravan of is leaving, cause it's no caravan of is leaving, want to worship whoever is leaving, cause it's no caravan of is leaving. Cause it's no caravan of despair. Cause it's no yet again come despair. Come yet again come.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, middle of the night, wherever, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome to All Souls Church Unitarian. My name is Shari Gilbert, she, her. For 200 years, we have created an intentional community where we search for the spiritual together, put our passion for social justice to work, and remind ourselves of our responsibility to and for one another. Our mission here at All Souls is to build what Dr. King called the beloved community. As Unitarian Universalists, we are diverse in so many ways, but united in our belief that the inherent worth and dignity of every person and in the obligation to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. We invite you to join us as we seek to create a diverse, justice-seeking, spirit-growing community that is true to the dream of all souls. Let us acknowledge that we walk upon the traditional territories of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway, the original nations of this land. Please pause to reflect on the peoples who inhabited these fertile lands between two rivers. This is a time in our service when we behold one another. Since we're now on Zoom, put yourself on gallery, keep yourself muted, and scroll through and greet the beautiful faces here. Please, let's greet one another and welcome.
What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown? What happens when she rules her own body? What happens when she sets the beat? What happens when she bows to nobody? What happens when she stands on her own 2 feet? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown? Whoa, we rise above. Whoa, we lead with love. Whoa, we have won. We are one. We've just begun. Whoa, we rise above. We lead with love. We have won. We are one. We've just begun. What happens when a woman? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens when a woman? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens? What happens? What happens when she wears the crown?
I'm having a moment on that video. Wow, I haven't seen it yet. That is incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And good morning. I'm Reverend Louise, your Minister of Congregational Care, pronoun she, her. It's good to be with you today. And we'd like to highlight a number of opportunities to be in conversation with one another over the next few weeks as our pandemic pause continues in many places. After the service today, you may want to dialogue further. And if you wish to speak about your own experience of reproductive loss, then please join me in a congregational care listening group at 11:45. There will be a separate link in the chat for this group. And you may also just stay on this same Zoom for coffee hour with Rob and talk about the history and the organizing issues that he lays out in this sermon. In addition, our monthly multiracial, multicultural families group will meet at 11:45 with Dolores Miller today. This is open to newcomers. It's a beautiful time for discussion. And the separate Zoom will also be in the chat, or there's email from Dolores and James. There are 2 more congregational care listening groups coming soon. Next Sunday, January 30th at 11:45, there will be a conversation about the challenges of parenting in this time of ongoing pandemic's flux. So join me and our Director of Religious Education, Laura Miller, for an hour dialogue. The Zoom link will be on the calendar or the weekly bulletin. And Wednesday, February 2nd at 7:30, I will facilitate a conversation about the challenges of supporting elders, parents, grandparents. We need each other in this season of health crises, staff shortages, and pandemic distance. Zoom link on the calendar or weekly bulletin. Finally, one more group. Sunday, February 6th at 11:45, you can come hear about All Souls social justice ministry campaigns. From now until June is key for organizing in Washington as the local elections impact affordable housing, environmental justice, migrant justice, racial justice, public safety. And All Souls is one of 40 faith communities in the Washington Interfaith Network, WIN. WIN has a strong track record influencing lasting change and several creative campaigns in the works. An organizer from WIN and leaders in the social justice ministry will discuss how we might be even more involved in this critical work. We turn to congregational concerns this week, where we gather just a few of the situations that are on our hearts and minds. So first, condolences to Anjali Jain, whose mother died on January 6th. Sukarma Gupta transitioned peacefully in Potomac, Maryland at 86 after several years of advanced dementia. We send love to Anjali and her extended family as they mourn the life of a remarkable trailblazing scientist and devoted mother of 4 daughters. We lament the painful outcome this week of organizing efforts to secure voting rights nationally. Thank you to all who fought for this important legislation. And we grieve the breakdown of political systems of protection, along with the great dangers that are unfolding for the next election season. Tracy Hughes Trotter wrote about this in the weekly bulletin Friday, our executive director. So take a look if you missed her stirring words. As we move into our time of meditation today, we name that many worldwide are celebrating the life of renowned teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who died Friday at age 95 in Vietnam. He was a founder of Engaged Buddhism. He was a Buddhist monk, a peace activist, and created the Plum Village tradition, which is a school of Buddhism in France. Our meditation this morning comes from his wisdom poem, Looking for Each Other. Please take a full inhale and exhale and settle into this very moment. The deep blue sky, the snow-capped mountains painted against the horizon, and the shining red sun sing with joy. You, Blessed One, Spirit of Life, are my first love, the love that is always present, always pure, and freshly new. and I shall never need a love that will be called last. You are the source of well-being flowing through numberless troubled lives. The water from your spiritual stream, always pure as it was in the beginning. You are the source of peace, solidity, and inner freedom. You are the Buddha, the Tathagata, a finder of truth. And with my one pointed mind, I vow to nourish your solidity and freedom in myself so I can offer solidity and freedom to countless others, now and forever. Blessed be.
Today, All Souls joins with many other Unitarian Universalist congregations in holding a Reproductive Justice Sunday. This is in response to the onslaught of threats against access to safe and legal abortion, including the very real possibility that the United States Supreme Court will significantly roll back the constitutional protections of the Roe v. Wade decision, handed down 49 years ago yesterday, on January 22nd, 1973. Recognizing that my voice as a cisgender white man is not the only one that should be heard on this subject, you'll hear other perspectives in this service as well. want to start by naming that the ability to access safe and legal reproductive health care has been a significant concern for people in our faith for more than 100 years. Many Unitarian and Universalist congregations, including All Souls Church, provided space for birth control clinics before they found their own buildings. And the Roe v. Wade case came about because the Women's Alliance at the First Unitarian Church of Dallas decided to support the person identified as Jane Roe, as well as the attorney, Sarah Weddington, who represented her. The general question for this Reproductive Justice Sunday is, given the circumstances, what is the work we are called to do now as a Unitarian Universalist community? Your ministry team knows that there are at least 3 different sentiments present in the congregation now. First, there are people who want us to take significant action to support access to abortion. Some are old enough to remember what it was like before Roe v. Wade and feel enormous sadness and pain at the thought of our national policies going backwards. There are also people whose personal beliefs about abortion or personal experiences with abortion are conflicted, uncertain, or simply opposed. Some of these folks may have liberal or even progressive views on most issues, but might feel like they have to keep their views on abortion to themselves for fear of judgment from progressive friends or even fellow church members. And finally, there are people for whom these topics land more personally due to their experience, some very recent, some right now, with reproductive challenges or loss, including infertility, complicated feelings about their own abortion, struggles related to childcare or child health, or the tragic loss of a pregnancy through miscarriage or the death of a child. As Reverend Louise announced, there will be a separate Zoom room today after the service, as well as another session on February 10th, if you want a separate space for healing. Regardless of which of these arenas you fall into and or any others, please know that we love you, we care for you, and you are welcome here. This is the reality. Sexual and reproductive experiences are among the most personal, challenging, and emotionally, spiritually, and politically loaded issues of our time. It's the 3 taboo topics all at once: sex, politics, and religion, which is why it is especially important that we talk about them openly and honestly, especially in church. I've said this before in sermons, and I'll say it again today. I believe that religion and religious people have done a disproportionate amount of the damage to healthy sexuality in this country. So I think that religion and religious people have a disproportionate role to play in the healing. We may not have created the problem, but we have a responsibility to be part of the solution. And this is not just about trying to fix other people elsewhere who have a problem. Our society's broken relationship with sexuality affects us all. And so we all have healing to do. In answering the question, what is the work we are called to do now? More action is certainly one of them. But there are 2 larger, more conceptual pieces that we need to consider as well. The first is to recognize that the cultural conflict about abortion and sexuality and reproduction generally is and has always been about much more than abortion or morality itself. It's about power and control. It's about gender and sexuality, yes, but is also fundamentally about race and racism. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to bring a racial justice lens to everything we do in this arena. Now, in the past, the general rallying cry was around a woman's right to choose. But we know now that it's broader than that. It's not just about women, and it's not just about choice. And it's important to recognize that the constitutional protections of the Roe v. Wade decision only place restrictions on what a state can do. They do not ensure access to abortion for anyone. Many Black, Brown, Indigenous, undocumented, and/or low-income people have never had meaningful access to abortion care. There's a big difference between having legal access to something and having actual access to it. And I'm grateful, so grateful that Ebony Peace, our A. Powell Davies intern, is willing to share some of her own personal experience and perspective on access or lack thereof. So I turn it over to Ebony now.
Hi, everyone. 77 years ago, my maternal grandmother's world turned upside down and all around when she found herself pregnant. Her father was a holiness bishop in the Pentecostal church. I don't know the details, but I do know that my grandmother was afraid. She submitted her fate to an illegal back alley abortion. She made it out alive, but not without serious consequences. For one, the whole event did not result in the termination of her pregnancy. Two, the botched procedure rendered her infertile for the rest of her life. I believe that if my grandmother had access to a safe abortion, my mother would not be here, and neither would I. I still believe with all my heart in a woman's right to choose. I still believe with all my heart that my grandmother should have had that choice, the option to do so safely. My grandmother was a waitress. She enjoyed sewing. She used her waitress money to send herself to seamstress school. She used her seamstress money to invest in low-end real estate. My grandmother rented small, tattered, but clean rooms to countless poor Black men during the Great Migration to the North. She was officially an independent, successful woman. The family who shunned her now asked for help. She helped them. Her success also allowed my mother to finish school. My mother became the first to attend college, get a PhD, and become an OBGYN medical doctor. A generation later, my mother was providing reproductive health care to women and girls that my grandmother never had safe or affordable access to. As a girl, I worked in my mother's office. One day, I received an angry call asking if we offered abortions. Later, my mother explained that if we weren't careful, the office could get bombed because of what people thought. I asked my mother if she performed abortions. She never said yes. She would only say that her responsibility was to her patients, that she considered not just their medical needs, but their emotional needs and personal circumstances. In the later stages of her career, my mother had several patients who she delivered 3 generations of babies. My mother had white patients, yet most of her patients were women of color. I distinctly remember she served many heavily covered immigrant women. I also remember the men who got agitated with my mother when she refused to allow them in the examination room. When mailing annual wellness reminders, I asked, why so many patients had out-of-state addresses? I learned the patients had lived in the area, but moved out of state. They traveled far for their appointments. When I pressed my mother about this, she explained that having high quality, affordable reproductive health care where you felt safe and respected was not common, that this was something to be cherished and valued, especially for women of color. I pray for a time where high quality, affordable reproductive health care, where women and girls feel safe and respected, is indeed common, is indeed practiced, and made available as a basic human right. May it be so.
Thank you, Ebony. The lack of actual access evidenced in Ebony's story is one of the many factors that gave rise to the reproductive justice movement. The phrase reproductive justice was created in 1994 by a group of Black women attending an international conference on population and development. According to Sister Song, the first organization created for this new approach, quote, they recognized that the women's rights movement, led by and representing middle-class and wealthy white women, could not defend the needs of women of color and other marginalized women and trans people. We needed to lift up our own national movement to uplift the needs of the most marginalized women, families, and communities. Gerald Hayes, a co-founder of the All Souls Reproductive Justice Initiative, serves as movement building director for a national reproductive justice organization called If, When, How. In a recent webinar, Gerald emphasized that it is impossible to separate reproductive justice and racial justice. They are inextricably linked. And as I read the definition she offered for reproductive justice, I invite you to feel the promise and potential it offers our society. She said, reproductive justice is an essential transformation of the systems and institutions that perpetuate oppression into structures that realize justice and a future where all people can self-determine their reproductive lives free from discrimination, coercion, or violence. And she listed 4 major tenets of reproductive justice: a right to have children, a right to not have children, a right to parent the children you have in a safe and healthy environment, and a right to bodily autonomy. Can we even imagine a world where this is possible? It's hard to do, I admit. It requires a very different understanding of the problems and solutions. And to be successful and to have integrity, our focus cannot be only about changing other people elsewhere. Even in Unitarian Universalist congregations like All Souls, people are hesitant to discuss these issues openly with each other or with their clergy. There may not be the same fear of judgment that there would be in a more conservative religious community, but our shame-intensive culture has been very successful at encouraging nearly everyone to suppress their emotional and spiritual needs related to sexual and reproductive experiences. Now, one of the clearest signs of success for any system of domination is when ordinary people unconsciously perpetuate it on their own without those in power needing to expend any energy on it. And one of the places that happens most in our culture is exactly at the intersection of reproductive and racial justice with policing. The dominant society wants us to police each other. It wants us to fear Black bodies and brown bodies, undocumented bodies, and it wants us to constantly judge people, including ourselves, for sexual and reproductive decisions that don't fit the conservative standard. Ending this domination requires proactive engagement, because dominant culture that goes unchallenged remains dominant. So in addition to bringing a racial justice lens to everything we do, we have to challenge ourselves to talk more openly and honestly about sexual and reproductive challenges in order to end the shame and the stigma. We have to talk about them more openly, especially in our religious communities. Now, because of the consulting work I do on the side, I've been working closely with clergy in Texas for the last 6 months. And I can testify that the fear is very real. The protesters they face are often quite violent and openly racist as well as sexist. There is nothing hidden about it there. Here in Washington, D.C., the racism is more subtle, but still present. Although abortion is safe and legal here, and there are multiple nearby providers, Congress has consistently used its financial authority over DC to prevent us from spending our own money, not federal tax dollars, but our own locally generated tax revenue to help people with low incomes afford abortion care. And as you can imagine, this barrier impacts Black and brown people at exponentially higher rates than white people. Also, DC has terrible statistics on maternal mortality for women of color. And as of 2020, there was literally no place in Ward 7 or 8 for a person to give birth. All of these are reproductive justice issues. To address the fear and to make change, one thing is very clear. We need more people, a lot more people, who are working for reproductive health, rights, and justice from a religious perspective. In more conservative places especially, yes, but also everywhere. The folks in Texas and Mississippi and other states like that can't do it alone. They need us working both locally and remotely. If you want to get more involved, check out the links at the bottom of the order of service. There are many opportunities. I want to close by sharing some words from Tracy Zorpet, the other co-founder of All Souls Reproductive Justice Initiative. She would share them herself, but fittingly, she is at this very moment preparing to teach in Our Whole Lives sexuality education class for youth at All Souls. Tracy writes about, quote, why I've chosen to center my volunteer work in this arena and the influence of this church in my Unitarian Universalist faith. And I kept coming back to the same 4-letter word, love. At All Souls, we covenant with each other, quote, to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving better. Earlier this month, Reverend Singford reminded us of the importance of covenant to the UU faith and the beauty of this simple phrase. Engaging with the reproductive justice movement, both inside and outside of All Souls, has helped me to love better. Through the DMV Abortion Practical Support Network, I assist people seeking abortion care. One night I sat with a mother from Baltimore needing a later abortion as she collapsed in tears. As the tears let up, I suggested to her that maybe there is no right or wrong decision. There's only the best decision for her and her family, and only she knows what that is. She said she believed in God, and I told her that I thought God believed in her too. Sometimes I drive women from the other side of the district, from where I live in Upper Northwest, to the DuPont Circle Clinic. At other times, I pick people up at their hotels or their airport, at the airport. They've usually traveled from Point South. Often my passengers think I'm an Uber driver. By that point, in their determined quest to overcome infuriating obstacles, they've been dealing with many different players, including abortion funds that are piecing together needed services and money. So I don't blame them for not knowing who's waiting at the curb. When I inform them that I'm a volunteer, they are surprised. Why would this woman I've never met drive me around the city? Sometimes when they find out that I'm available to listen as well as navigate downtown traffic, they tell me part of their abortion story. They tell me about their love for their children and about their certainty that they cannot parent one more. Other times they are quiet. Either way, they are not alone. Hopefully they show up for their appointment and they begin what will likely be a difficult day, knowing that somebody cares. Somebody thinks their personhood, their heartbeat matters. The brilliant Bell Hooks, the path-breaking scholar who pushed feminism beyond its white middle-class framework, spoke clearly to the radical power of love in struggles for liberation. If she were asked to define herself, she said, quote, "I would start with stripping down to what fundamentally informs my life, which is that I'm a seeker on the path. I think of feminism and I think of anti-racist struggles as part of it. But where I stand spiritually is steadfastly on a path about love." I think she might have liked that line in our covenant about loving better. Such is my prayer for us this day. May we all, for others and for ourselves, learn to love better. Amen.
You've heard me talk a lot about my kids, Mara, 22, and Anakin, 20, but I probably haven't talked a lot about their birth stories. Mara was our ART baby, artificial reproductive technology, our in vitro fertilization baby. We went through 3 years of infertility workup and 3 IVF procedures. The first procedure went well, but I didn't get pregnant. The second time, I got pregnant with twins, but I miscarried the twins at 14 weeks, and that was devastating. I swore going into my third IVF that regardless of the outcome, it would be the last time. And I relied on the old adages, 3 strikes, you're out, or third's a charm. And I got pregnant. I was 41 by then and opted for an amniocentesis, but the procedure ruptured the amniotic sac. I lost all the amniotic fluid and I was on bed rest from 17 weeks to 36 weeks. It was not the dreamy pregnancy portrayed in books, commercials, or Hallmark baby shower cards, but Mara was born full term, healthy, and we were in love with our long-awaited baby. We thought we had frozen embryos from Mara's cycle and started the workup to use those when she was about 15 months old. But nope, the clinic called us with the bad news that the embryos had never made it out of the lab and there were no frozen embryos. We were done. I'd said Mara's IVF was the last one. And fortunately, my former husband and I were in complete agreement that adoption was the next step. Little could we have possibly imagined that our second baby would be born 9 months to the day that we found out there were no frozen embryos. And Anakin was born on July 15th, Mara's second birthday. It was meant to be. As difficult as the IVF and adoption processes were, I was one of the lucky ones. I was white. I had a home, a good job, great insurance. My out-of-pocket expenses capped at $800 a year. Capped. Can you imagine? I was completely open with my employers during my entire infertility treatment, and they were supportive and encouraging. During bed rest, I worked from home as long as I could, and then I went on short-term disability. I was an open book with friends and family, and everyone joined to help out as they could. During the adoption process, we refinanced our mortgage, which basically paid for the adoption agency and travel expenses. We flew to Guatemala to bring home Anakin, and we're thrilled to meet her birth mother, Albertina Diaz Contreras. As a mother myself, it was comforting to meet Albertina, to look her in the eyes and see her resolve that she was doing the right thing and trusting her baby into our family. And we quickly fell in love with Anakin. While I was totally open during our infertility and adoption years, and I can happily tell my kids' birth stories, I know it is not so for so many women. I'm honored today to be a part of the All Souls Reproductive Justice Sunday and to help Rob Keithan and others at the spiritual care session on reproductive experiences in February. Let this morning's offering begin. You may click the link in the chat, which will direct you to the All Souls online giving, or you can go to allsouls.org donate or text ASCU to 73256. Thank you for your generosity.
One, two, three, four.
The reproductive justice framework affirms the value of everybody and everybody. May we go forth and do the same. Blessed be.